There is a coordinate in the ocean that shouldn't exist. No flag claims it. This coordinate is sovereign. No map explains it. It is officially classified by the highest authorities. Engineers call it a platform. Financiers call it an asset. The men funding it call it an exit. We are not building a home, the recording says. We are building a restart button for civilization, our chance to begin again. This isn't a vacation compound. It has its own radar, its own weapons, and its own laws. A sovereign military force. One island for the ultra-rich would be a curiosity. A dozen of them rising across the oceans is a pattern. Because the people with the most to lose believe the ground itself is unstable. A final departure. Because the people with the most to lose believe the ground itself is unstable. Because the people with the most to lose believe the ground itself is unstable. The risk is too high. The dream is 50 years old, a vision from a different era. Nobody is laughing at floating nations anymore. This is the new reality. A shipping heir, a sovereign fund, and a technology mogul. The architects of a new world. 3 different fortunes, 1 shared coordinate. The pattern is clear. The first rule of the project was simple. Never let one name own it. 12 shell companies, 4 flags, and a single hidden coordinate. It's larger than most national capitals, a massive structure in a silent sea. It's larger than most national capitals, a massive structure in a silent sea. And almost no one outside its walls has ever set foot on it. Access is strictly denied. What's emerging isn't a yacht and it isn't a resort. It's a self-contained settlement built from nothing, a garden in the machine. $500 billion. The price of independence is high, enough to fund a mid-sized nation's entire annual budget. It is in staggering sum. Most of the real construction happens after dark. Hiding a $500 billion structure takes as much engineering as building it. One former project manager broke his NDA anyway. He had a story to tell. They don't think of it as hiding. They think of it as being early. Hiding a $500 billion structure takes as much engineering as building it. See for yourself. The platform doesn't just float. It powers itself completely, a self-sustaining heart of steel and cold. It powers itself completely, a self-sustaining heart of steel and cold, generating more power than a small city, ready and waiting for the shift. It grows its own food, it makes its own water. Every basic need a nation provides, this platform provides itself. Pure water from the deep. The defenses aren't symbolic, they are real and they are ready. This is a fortress that happens to also be a home. A fortress that happens to also be a home, always watching the approach. The story finally breaks, a single question on every network. It's not a denial, it's something more unsettling, indifference. Something more unsettling, indifference. The mystery continues. Out here, nothing touches us, one resident says. A life without borders. It sounds like freedom. It also sounds like exile, a choice between two worlds. It's finished. It floats. It answers to no one. It is a world apart. But building on water was only ever the first step. The first step toward the future, a silent conclusion to the search. There is a coordinate in the ocean that shouldn't exist. No flag claims it, no map explains it, but something is being built there, right now. Engineers call it a platform. Financiers call it an asset. The men funding it call it something else entirely, an exit. We are not building a home, the recording says. We are building a restart button for civilization. It was meant to stay private. It didn't. This isn't a vacation compound. It has its own radar, its own weapons, its own laws. It is, in every sense that matters, a country. One island for the ultra-rich would be a curiosity. A dozen of them quietly rising across the world's oceans is a pattern. And patterns like this always have a reason. Why now? Because for the first time in a generation, the people with the most to lose believe the ground itself is unstable. And unstable ground has always produced the same instinct: leave first. The dream is 50 years old. Libertarian engineers once sketched floating nations on napkins and were laughed out of the room. Nobody is laughing anymore. Call them a consortium, a shipping heir, a sovereign fund, a technology mogul. 3 different fortunes, one shared coordinate. None of their names appear on a single public filing. The first rule of the project was simple: never let one name own it. 12 shell companies, 4 flags, and a single hidden coordinate. On paper, nobody owns the platform. In practice, everybody who matters does. Every gold rush needs a frontier. This one just happens to be floating. And frontiers, historically, don't answer to anyone. It's larger than most national capitals. It employs more security than most small militaries. And almost no one outside its walls has ever set foot on it. The workforce doesn't know exactly where they're going until they arrive. The NDA runs longer than most marriages. Silence here is simply the price of admission. What's emerging isn't a yacht and it isn't a resort. It's a self-contained settlement built from nothing, answering to no government. And its architects insist that's exactly the point. $500 billion. That's the figure whispered by the one leaked memo that slipped through the NDAs, enough to fund a mid-sized nation's entire annual budget. This platform is not alone. At least 11 other coordinates show the same construction signatures, the same shell structure. It isn't one project, it's a network. Most of the real construction happens after dark. TARPs, coded radio traffic, manifests that never say what's actually inside. Hiding a $500 billion structure takes as much engineering as building it. Pieces of it are built in a dozen countries under a dozen false names. Nothing ships as what it actually is. By the time regulators notice a gap, the piece is already gone. One former project manager broke his NDA anyway. They don't think of it as hiding, he said. They think of it as being early. Early to a future the rest of us haven't been invited to. Local officials in 3 different countries were paid to look the other way, not with cash, with shares in the holding company itself. A quiet ownership stake buys silence far more reliably than a bribe. At least 2 governments have quietly tasked satellites to watch it. Neither has found a law it clearly breaks. That silence is the loudest warning sign of all. The platform doesn't just float, it powers itself completely. No cables run to shore, no pipeline feeds it. It was designed from the first sketch to never need anyone else again. It grows its own food, it makes its own water. Every basic need a nation provides its citizens, this platform provides itself, except, notably, citizenship. The defenses aren't symbolic. Anti-drone systems, underwater sonar, a response protocol for anything that gets too close. This is a fortress that happens to also be a home. The first permanent residents arrive quietly, in small groups, unannounced. Passports are held for safekeeping. Their new home doesn't ask where they're from. It only asks what they're worth. For the first time, the platform lights itself up in full. From the air, it looks less like a structure and more like a small nation. And nations eventually get noticed. The story finally breaks, in the smallest possible way. A single question at a briefing. A vague, practiced non-answer. It's not a denial, it's something more unsettling. Indifference. Ask a maritime lawyer if this is legal, and you get a shrug. The platform sits precisely in the gap the law forgot to close. It isn't breaking the rules. It's exploiting the fact that out here, there barely are any. 3 nations discussed acting together. None of them showed up to the meeting. Turns out, half of their own pension funds are quietly invested in the platform's parent company. Out here, nothing touches us, one resident says. Not the markets, not the politics, not the people. It sounds like freedom. It sounds just as easily like a very expensive form of exile. For all its power, the platform feels strangely empty. A city built for thousands, occupied by dozens. It was never meant to hold a population, only an escape hatch. The number everyone whispered turns out to be real. $500 billion and rising, tangled into pension funds across 3 continents. Which means it isn't just a billionaire's fortress anymore, it's everyone's problem. And this was never the only one. 11 sister structures rising quietly on the same model, funded by the same hidden hands. One platform is an experiment. A dozen is infrastructure. Sovereignty, the recording says, is simply a service, and we can now provide it ourselves. For the first time, the goal is said plainly, out loud, without apology. This was never about escaping the world. It was about replacing it. A patrol ship hails the structure. There is no answer. Command's only order is to watch and wait. For the first time, a sovereign navy has simply chosen to look away. It's finished. It floats. It answers to no one. But building on water was only ever the first step. The real challenge was always going to be staying hidden from the world's navies. This isn't one building, it's thousands of interlocking pieces. Any section can be unbolted, replaced, or expanded without ever shutting the whole structure down. This structure isn't mere architecture, it's something entirely new. It's a living organism made of steel. Each pod arrives finished, wired, and pressure tested before it ever touches the platform. Docking takes 90 minutes, full occupancy same day. A luxury residence? Assembled the way you'd assemble a shipping container. Every system is integrated from the moment of connection. It was never designed to be finished. Every phase adds capacity for the next 1,000 residents. And the next, it grows the way a colony grows. Outward and without asking permission. A sovereign territory built on engineering alone. At the center of it all sits a compact fusion-adjacent reactor. Enough power for a mid-sized city, sealed inside a hull the size of a warehouse. It is quite possibly the most advanced part of the entire structure. Failure is not an option when the grid is your only lifeline. No cables to a mainland, no dependence on a single nation's grid. The platform was engineered around one obsession, never needing anyone again. That obsession is what makes it either brilliant or deeply unsettling. The reactor isn't full fusion, not yet. It's the next best thing, compact, safe, and quiet. It produces almost no waste and needs refueling only once a decade. It's the kind of technology most nations are still years from deploying at home. A decade of power locked in a single module. The ocean around it becomes the platform's only water source, filtered, mineralized, and piped directly into every residence within the hour. It turns the very thing surrounding it into the one resource it can never run out of. Water security guaranteed by the horizon itself. Every meal on the platform starts and ends within its own walls. Grains, greens, and proteins grown in stacked towers instead of open fields. A closed loop from seed to plate, with nothing imported and nothing wasted. Nothing leaves this place because almost nothing is allowed to go to waste. Every system feeds the next: water, food, energy, waste, and back to water again. It's the kind of self-sufficiency most cities can only dream of. A perfect cycle, floating on the deep. Every residence here is designed as its own small fortress within the larger one. Private docks, private elevators, private staff quarters, tucked out of sight. You could live your entire life on this platform and never share a room with a stranger. Autonomy is the ultimate luxury. There's a beach here and a forest, both entirely artificial, both entirely convincing. Every part of nature the platform lacks. It simply imports and recreates. The goal isn't survival, it's never noticing you left the world behind at all. A manufactured reality, perfectly sustained. The wellness team tracks something unusual. Residents report high satisfaction and rising isolation at the same time. They love the comfort. They're quietly starving for anything unscripted. Paradise, it turns out, still leaves room for loneliness. In a world of total control, who do you talk to about feeling lost? There's a school here too, for the handful of children who call this home. They learn history, mathematics, and languages from a place with no history of its own. It's hard not to wonder what a childhood spent entirely at sea does to a person. A horizon with no edges and a life with no maps. I haven't spoken to a stranger in 8 months, one journal entry reads. Every face I see, I already know exactly why they're here. It's the kind of sentence that sounds like peace, until you sit with it a little longer. Right now, it holds only a fraction of the people it was built for. The rest of the space sits ready, waiting, reserved. This was never meant to be a home for hundreds. It was built for tens of thousands. A city waiting for its citizens to arrive. Researchers have studied this instinct for years. The wealthier people become, the less they trust the people around them. Above a certain threshold, every relationship starts to look like a potential liability. This platform isn't an accident, it's the natural endpoint of that distrust. Isolation is the ultimate security policy. Getting in isn't just about money. Every resident is vetted, scored, and ranked. Before they're ever allowed a key, it isn't a community, it's a curated membership with an admissions committee no one ever sees. The price of entry is total transparency. Even socializing here follows a script. Guarded conversation, practiced warmth, nothing said that couldn't be repeated in a courtroom. It looks like community. It behaves like a negotiation. A social life with an expiration date. One counselor, granted rare anonymous access, said the same fear kept surfacing. Not fear of losing money, fear of the ordinary world itself. The very isolation meant to protect them was starting to make the outside feel unsurvivable. The request is quietly declined for security reasons. The wall you build to keep the world out eventually keeps you in. The design is beautiful, genuinely, undeniably beautiful. But beauty built for thousands, occupied by dozens, has its own kind of silence. It's the silence of a museum after closing time, except someone actually lives there. Even the architects noticed the problem. One recurring complaint: too quiet, too controlled, too perfect. Their solution: manufacture imperfection, narrow alleys, uneven facades, the illusion of a city that grew on its own. A gilded cage, redesigned to feel a little less like a cage. I dream about traffic, one entry admits, about strangers bumping into me on a sidewalk. I never thought I'd miss something so small. Perfection, it turns out, has a cost nobody priced into the blueprints. Not everyone here lives the same life. Owners occupy the outer ring. Staff occupy the inner core. Out of sight, out of the brochures, it's a hierarchy as rigid as anything it claims to be escaping. The technology changed, the hierarchy didn't. Walls exist even where you can't see them. Below the gardens and the private docks is a second platform entirely. Cramped quarters, long shifts. A workforce that keeps the fortress running and rarely sees the ocean view. The gilded cage has a basement, and the basement looks a lot like everywhere else. Service is the silent engine of paradise. From above, it looks like paradise. From below, it looks like every company town that came before it. The technology changed, the hierarchy didn't. A sovereign world with a very familiar structure. This utopia comes at a staggering physical and social cost. This is the image the platform sells: total peace, total beauty, total control. And for a moment, standing there, it's genuinely convincing. It removes the reason most people call a place, instead of a facility, home. Isolation isn't just a policy, it's a way of life. A speck of humanity in a sea of steel. Every beautiful space here sits a few steps from a locked, guarded one. The forest dome, the private beach, the reactor core down below, always within reach. Utopia, it turns out, needs a lot of security to stay looking effortless. The price of perfection is constant vigilance. Nothing here ever surprises you, the resident says. That was the whole appeal. The only thing that moves is the machine that watches. The only thing we couldn't engineer our way out of was loneliness. A life without surprises is a life without growth. The machines are perfect. The people are still human. And still somehow the most striking thing about it is how little moves. And humans aren't built for silos. A silent fortress in a silent sea. We solved every engineering problem you could imagine, the engineer admits. Power, water, food, isolation from every crisis on land. And one column on that ledger still has no clean answer. Is any of this actually legal? For every engineering marvel this platform represents, one question keeps resurfacing. Not how they built it, not why they built it. The laws of the sea weren't written for this. The engineering succeeded completely. The economics remained staggering, billions a year just to keep the lights running. An operating cost that exceeds most national budgets? The engineering, it turns out, was the easy part. The harder question was always going to be legal, not technical. The price of sovereignty is a mountain of debt, because building a fortress is one thing, making it untouchable is another entirely. How, under any existing law, they were ever allowed to build it at all? The storm is coming, and the walls are ready. Someone is finally picking up the phone. A sanctuary or a target? Somewhere inside this platform sits the real secret. Not the reactor, not the vaults. A single legal framework quietly engineered to make all of this untouchable. And that framework is about to become the story. Locked away from the world, for now. The fortress is finished, the isolation is complete, the technology, undeniable. But none of it explains the one thing everyone watching wants to know. How exactly do they get away with this? The answer is deeper than you think. But none of it explains the one thing everyone watching wants to know. How exactly do they get away with this? The answer is deeper than you think. How do they get away with it? One clause, written 80 years ago, for an entirely different world. Nobody closed it, because nobody imagined anyone would ever need it like this. The law was written for oil rigs and research stations. Nobody in that room imagined a private nation for the ultra-wealthy. And yet, technically, it fits the platform perfectly. The platform flies a flag, just not one you'd expect. A small, cash-strapped nation paid handsomely to grant it a registry. On paper, it now belongs to a country most people couldn't find on a map. It's called a flag of convenience. For a fee, almost any small nation will register almost any vessel, no questions asked. This time, the vessel just happens to be the size of a small country itself. Every document checks out. Every signature is real. By the letter of the law, the platform is completely, infuriatingly legitimate. And that's precisely what makes it so dangerous. Flags of convenience aren't new. Shipping companies have used them for a century. Cheaper registration, looser regulation, fewer questions asked. This platform simply took an old shipping trick and applied it to an entire floating nation. Beyond 12 nautical miles from any coastline, the ocean belongs to no one. It's meant to keep the seas open and shared. Instead, it's become the one place left on Earth where almost nothing applies. The team behind this didn't break any single law. They mapped every law that existed and built directly inside the space between them. It isn't defiance, it's precision. The United Nations has debated this exact question for years. Every proposal to close the gap has failed, usually by the narrowest possible margin. Which raises an uncomfortable question. Who exactly keeps voting to protect the loophole? A pattern starts to emerge among the delegates who blocked reform. Several hold quiet, indirect stakes in the very structures they're meant to regulate. The loophole isn't surviving by accident. It's being protected. One journalist spent 2 years tracing the ownership behind the ownership, nominee names, shell trusts, and donors that all led back to the same small circle. The loophole has defenders in exactly the rooms where it could be closed. This isn't the only nation renting out its flag. A handful of small, struggling countries have quietly become the registry of choice for every sister platform. For them, it's not ideology. It's simply the best deal on the table. For some of these nations, one registry fee funds an entire government ministry for a year. It's not corruption in the traditional sense. It's survival economics. The loophole exists because for a few small countries, it simply pays too well to close. Historians see an old pattern here, dressed in new technology. A century ago, powerful interests carved out concessions from weaker nations for resources. Today, they carve out concessions for sovereignty itself. Is it colonialism, capitalism, something entirely new? Even the experts studying it can't agree on what to call it. What they do agree on is that no existing law was built to stop it. This is the document everyone suspected existed, and no one could ever confirm. A private framework, negotiated quietly, granting the platform something close to diplomatic status. Not full nationhood. Just enough protection to make challenging it nearly impossible. The terms were simple and devastating in their simplicity. Full registry, total tax exemption, a binding promise of non-interference from the host nation, in exchange for a fee that dwarfed anything that nation had ever received before. Non-interference clauses usually protect embassies, sometimes military bases. They've never until now protected a private residence for the ultra-wealthy. This is the first time that legal shield has ever been sold to a corporation. The treaty has never been filed with any international registry, which means officially it doesn't exist at all. Unofficially, it's the single most important document protecting $500 billion in assets. If this holds up, one regional diplomat said, it changes what sovereignty even means. Any wealthy enough group could simply buy the same protection. The sentence hangs there, unfinished, because no one has an answer yet. A watchdog group tried to challenge the treaty in court. The judge admitted, on record, that no existing legal category quite fit what was in front of him. The case remains open, unresolved, and quietly stalled. The consortium's only public response was a single, carefully worded statement: "We respect the sovereignty of our host nation fully." It answered nothing, and somehow that was exactly the point. This treaty wasn't a one-time deal. It was a template. 3 law firms, 4 nations. The exact same terms, copied almost word for word. What started as one loophole is quietly becoming a legal industry. If this template works once, it will be used 100 times, the researcher warns. Every wealthy group with enough capital now has a blueprint for buying sovereignty. The projection isn't hypothetical anymore. It's already underway. 12 platforms, 1 shared legal architecture, a web spanning 3 oceans. This was never a single fortress built by a single family. It's an entire parallel legal system, quietly built beside the one the rest of us live under. The pressure finally forces an emergency session. For the first time, a formal investigation is approved, narrowly, after years of stalled proposals. Whether it changes anything at all remains an open question. Inside the consortium, the news lands with something close to indifference. Investigations, their lawyers note, carry no binding power. Not yet, anyway. While the world debates, the blueprints for Platform 13 are already moving forward. Some in the military have quietly discussed more direct options, but the platform's defenses, built for exactly this scenario, make any action costly and uncertain. Nobody wants to be the first to escalate a fight nobody fully understands yet. Even if the world wanted to shut this down tomorrow, it may already be too late. Pension funds, sovereign wealth, national budgets, quietly entangled in the same network. The loophole didn't just protect 12 platforms, it made the entire global economy complicit. This money built hospitals, the official insists, schools, roads we could never otherwise afford. It's not an unreasonable point. It's also not an answer to the question of what exactly was sold to get it. By almost every traditional measure, this shouldn't count as a nation at all. No population base, no historical claim, no broad international recognition. And yet, functionally, it operates exactly like one. And increasingly, it's treated like one too. Not everyone in these host nations agrees with the arrangement. Protests have grown quietly in each country that signed one of these deals. The people whose flag is flying over the platform were rarely, if ever, asked. Inside the boardroom, the backlash barely registers. Protests on one screen, record valuations on the next. So far, public anger and financial success have simply learned to coexist. Every unchecked loophole eventually stops being a loophole, the historian says. It becomes the new rule, and the people who found it first get to write it. It's a warning dressed as an observation, and it lands exactly as heavy either way. They didn't break the law, they found its edges and quietly moved in. But a legal system this precisely engineered doesn't stay borrowed for long. If they can already ignore the law this completely, what happens when they finally decide to write their own? no declarations, no flags planted in defiance. This revolution never needed a single headline to succeed. It only needed 12 quiet coordinates and a decade of nobody paying close enough attention. Empires rarely fall in a single dramatic moment. They fade quietly, while something new rises in the space they leave behind. This may be the first empire to rise before anyone even noticed the old one had started to fall. For decades, wealth has been slowly slipping outside the reach of any single government. Offshore accounts, shell trusts, now entire floating nations. The platforms aren't a break from that trend. They're its most honest expression yet. Borders were never a law of nature, the address says. They were always just an agreement. We've simply stopped agreeing. It's the clearest, most unsettling version of the argument anyone has said aloud. While the world debated what to call this, construction never paused for a single day. Platform 13 is already rising in a new ocean under a new flag. The revolution isn't coming. It has been underway the entire time. The original platform's success became its own advertisement. New investors don't need convincing anymore. They need a coordinate and a legal template. Both are now readily, quietly available. What began as a handful of coordinates in 3 oceans has become a genuine global lattice. Every major body of water now hosts at least one node in the network. It stopped being an experiment somewhere around platform number 7. Analysts finally gave the phenomenon a name, a parastate archipelago. Not quite nations, not quite corporations. Something built deliberately in between. And when asked who actually governs it, no one in the room had a clean answer. Another proposal, another stalled vote. The same quiet conflicts of interest that protected the first platform now protect the entire archipelago. The system built to regulate this has, so far, proven remarkably easy to outlobby. Most people, understandably, have never heard of any of this. It doesn't show up on a grocery receipt. It doesn't change a daily commute, which is exactly why it's been able to grow this large without ever becoming anyone's emergency. The relationship isn't as one-sided as it first appears. Small nations depend on registry fees. Larger nations depend on the returns flowing through their pension funds. Everyone, in one way or another, now has a stake in this continuing to work. The danger isn't just political anymore, it's systemic. A single crisis on a single platform could now ripple through pension funds and sovereign budgets worldwide. The archipelago has become too interconnected to fail quietly. A structure once treated as a bizarre curiosity is now discussed like ordinary infrastructure. That shift took less than a decade. Normalization, it turns out, doesn't need approval. It just needs time. The next frontier isn't even hidden anymore. Early plans already describe applying the same legal template beyond the ocean entirely. If it worked on water, the thinking goes, there's no reason it can't work in orbit. One legal trick, one willing small nation, one coordinate far enough from anyone's authority. That's the entire recipe, and it scales to almost anywhere. The ocean was just the first place it was ever tested. Is this the end of the nation state? Probably not entirely, not yet, but it may be the end of the nation state as the only serious option. For the first time in centuries, the wealthy have a genuine alternative to citizenship itself. Power has always built its own container. City walls, then national borders, now this. Each shift happened because whoever held the most concentrated power needed a new shape to hold it in. This is simply the latest shape. It almost certainly won't be the last. 2 households reviewing their finances at the very same hour. One worries about next month's bills, the other debates funding Platform 14. The gap between them was always wide. It has never been engineered quite this literally before. Automation has been quietly widening this gap for years. The platforms are simply the first time that gap became something you could actually point to on a map. Inequality used to be a statistic. Now it has an address. I built the same desalination system twice, the former engineer says. I had once for a few hundred billionaires, now for a coastal town that actually needed it. And I know which one I'm prouder of. For the first time, a summit convenes with the world actually watching. Every nation with a stake, for or against, finally in the same room. The consortium itself was invited. Its chair remained empty the entire session. Their response was almost elegant in its bluntness. We have no obligation to participate in national proceedings. It wasn't a threat. It was simply a statement of fact from their point of view. The summit produced a resolution, strongly worded, unanimously passed, entirely unenforceable. "We can condemn it," so one delegate admitted quietly afterward. "We just can't stop it." For the platforms, that distinction has always been the entire point. Life on the platforms continued entirely undisturbed the very next morning. Construction resumed, valuations climbed, the resolution changed nothing measurable at all. The world had spoken. The ocean simply hadn't been listening. Maybe this was never a revolution at all. Revolutions demand something. This simply left. History may remember it less as an uprising and more as the quietest migration in modern memory. 10 years after that first satellite image, the platform holds an anniversary of its own. A quiet toast among a few hundred people to a decade of answering to no one. It's the closest thing this story has to a victory lap. The platform is fuller now than it once was, still nowhere near capacity, but it's no longer just an experiment holding a handful of residents. It's become undeniably a place people actually call home. "I've never actually lived in a country," the young resident admits. "Not really, just here." "Would I leave? I don't think I'd even know how to start." 13 platforms, 3 oceans, 1 shared legal architecture. What started as a single unexplained coordinate is now a permanent feature of the map. The frontier didn't close. It just found a new shape to keep expanding into. The man who signed the very first contract still walks this same railing most evenings. He rarely gives interviews anymore. There's little left, in his view, worth explaining. The ocean, for him, said everything it needed to a decade ago. If the wealthiest people on Earth are quietly leaving the ship, it's worth asking what that says about the ocean the rest of us are still swimming in. The tide didn't rise to meet them. They simply built their own shore. It started with a coordinate that shouldn't exist. It ends the same way, a quiet point on the map, hiding an entire hidden order beneath it. The only thing that changed is how much of the story we're now able to see. Not an ending, a pause. The next coordinate is likely already being poured in concrete somewhere right now. Whether the rest of the world ever gets a say in it remains, for now, an open question. So here's the question worth sitting with. If the 0.1% are leaving the ship, what does that say about the ocean the rest of us are still swimming in? Would you live in a sovereign floating state if it meant never coming back? Drop your answer in the comments below. Would you live in a sovereign floating state if it meant never returning home? And if a story like this exists once, remember, it rarely exists only once.